You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Life is not easy. It never was, and it never will be. A good life takes grit. Prioritize who you are and who you want to be, because life isn't fair, and a little grit can make all the difference. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am joined by my brother, the Gritty Broman. Brent, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Today's podcast is with our friends from Wilde Arrow. We sit down with Jeremiah and Cody down at Wilde Arrow, and we talk arrows. So mostly arrows, mechanical versus fixed broadhead, arrow builds, various components.
How many fletchings? 3, 4, 6?
6. Didn't they have like a 6 or an 8 fletch?
Jeremiah said he shot a deer with a 6 fletched arrow.
Anyway, it's a good show. Always fun to talk archery, and these guys
get super nerdy.
Yeah, and they're awesome. They know their bows. They tune and build so many
all day. That's what they do all day long.
Every new bow comes out has its own quirks and little things they figure out over time as they try to master the flight of the arrow coming out of those bows, and the bow designs are unique, and it's really interesting to sit down and spend time hanging out with guys at a bow shop like this. And the thing is they hang out there every week, and we all have conversations with them, but we don't have the camera rolling. So we decided, hey, you know what? We're going to go down there and actually hang out at Wilde Arrow and pick their brain, just kind of throw on some headsets and grab conversations that we really should be sharing publicly, but don't. So that's a good one. Upcoming podcasts, we have a podcast next week with Ryan Carter, which I think is going to be great. You'll enjoy that. I always like Ryan. Love having him on the podcast. Can listen to him all day. Next week, we're going to cover the book Land of the Spotted Eagle, which is Luther Standing Bear. We've talked about him before in the sense of Native American
history and cultures.
And how they perceive nature, and it's fascinating. But there's so much that we never covered in the book that I think you'll all enjoy about how Native American men and women were raised and culture. And
they have a very interesting culture in society.
And the reason that I find it fascinating is just because how different it is from the modern world. I think it's something that we really should strive to go back to in some ways, because there's just a void in modern life that civilization can't fill. And there's something about being out there in the wild that we need as human beings. And then we do a podcast with Chris Spieler again, where we talk about diet, and I think that's going to be great. I think that'll be really beneficial to all you that are trying to figure out how and what you should be eating. Maybe you just need a reminder on how you can be better about diet. And I think it's great to talk to guys like Lampers, and now Spieler, he's 40. I'm 44. Lampers is 45. Honestly, I don't care what you eat if you're 25, because you get away with murder.
Mm-hmm. Talk about breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah. I'm talking, what should everyone be eating? But really, older athletes, older fitness people.
It comes to a point where your body says, I've had enough of your crap, and you're going to have to start paying for it.
Yeah. So I think that it's really beneficial to have these discussions. And the more I have them with varied people, the more I kind of learn. There's some consistencies, but I also learn there's quite a bit of difference from human to human, from person to person. What works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. So that's a good podcast. The Hoyt Bow Giveaway, that's going out tomorrow. So if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, do that. And we received a lot of emails from people on whether or not they won the bow. Apparently they didn't get the newsletter. And so they're writing in. So far, nobody that contacted us is a winner.
Nope.
Is the person we selected. So look for the new newsletter that's coming out tomorrow. And yeah, if you're not on there, go to briancall.com and sign up. right now, if you're turkey hunting, you have until April 15th, which is how many days away? Today's the 9th. We're recording this. 9th, 10th, 11th, something like that. So if you want some turkey calls from Jason Phelps Game Calls, you have until April 15th. Use the code GRITTY15 and you'll get a discount. Do it. If you haven't seen the shirt I'm wearing, it's really cool. It's Public Land Entertainment for All, and it's a Nintendo duck hunt shirt that I get from Public Land Tees, which is owned by our buddy Sam Solholt, Public Land school bus driver, photographer, stud extraordinaire. Anyway, he makes these shirts. You should check them out. I've been getting emails about my shirt that says Billy Billy on it with the Billy Goat. People asking where I got that. I got that from Hoyt, and I don't think they make it anymore. And then the I Eat Ibex shirt, I got that from Trevin Stolzfus from Outback Outdoors. And I honestly don't know where you get that shirt, except maybe from Outback Outdoors. Anyway, I got so many emails on those two shirts, and then a bunch on Gritty apparel and Gritty hats and shirts. Brent and I are this close to having the website completely built out and all the stuff ready to ship. So it's taking us way too long to do that, but we're almost there. And then hopefully our plan is to just keep churning out cool, Gritty stuff over the next year once we have this foundation in place and can start selling that. So we appreciate all the interest in that and you guys tuning into that. It's very cool. And we're going to roll into this podcast. Before we do, I have one pet peeve that I want to get off my chest.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a thing, and this sort of, I think most listeners can agree with me. I heard this comic talk about the difference between men and women when they go to the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
Like, women, they go into the grocery store and they got to not just the grocery store, the mall. They got to go in and just sort of, they don't know what they're going to do. They'll find out when they get there.
They're going to peruse.
And they got to touch every garment in the store. Just touch it, just feel it and walk by it and feel it and look at price tags and spend hours there. I can't stand that. I can't stand it more than anything. As a guy, like he says in this comedy routine, a guy has an objective. Where are we going?
Mm-hmm.
How quickly can we get in, get it, kill it, bring it back? Like there's a goal.
When I go to the mall, I pretty much turn into a SWAT team member.
Yeah.
In and out.
Where are we going? Okay, boom. Go in, objective accomplished, out. But gals aren't built that way, most of them. So there's always this conflict between my wife and I. So we just know it's better if we don't shop together.
Smart.
But my real pet peeve is when I'm like at Costco and I'm trying to go in, slay the beast, and bring it home.
Mm-hmm.
Get the list done and get out. Get in, get out. And you got all these people just clogging the aisleways and blocking you can't get past them. Often, I swear to you, they're Asian. It's and I truly think that's just having lived in Japan. It's like they're just used to crowds and just being in your space and blocking, and you just deal, know. Maybe it's like that in New York too, in overcrowded places.
I don't know what it is, but I don't put up with that.
I can't stand it.
I get mean.
I'm always aware of who's behind me, who's next to me on the left, the right. I'm always trying to move out of the way so people can be fast and get things done.
Mm-hmm.
And when you got 3 people in front of you, old woman, and just blocking the aisle and talking, and I want to ram their cart. I want to ram them.
Oh, I'll bump a cart. I'll wedge it, dude. I'll start tapping it out of the way. I have moved people's carts before to get around them. I don't have patience for that. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah. So there you have it, folks. That's the pet peeve.
Get out our way.
Today's workout, hike 5 miles, 40-pound pack up the mountain. Final news. We have upcoming Mountain Ops Gritty Film Tour coming your way. We're about to launch that site where you can get tickets and come to that event. It's going to be awesome. Brent, anything left to add?
This last weekend, you remember you were showing me that YouTube video thing, Letterkenny?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So it
was news to you.
I'd never heard of it. Never heard of it. And then
for someone on YouTube as much as you and into comedy, it sort of surprised me.
A little bit, yeah. But I went home literally that day, this last Friday, and I was trying to find something for me and the wife to watch, flipping through Hulu. And it's there. It's on Hulu. They have like 7 seasons. I watched 4 seasons of Letterkenny over this last weekend, Brian.
I don't know if our mom would approve of that.
Probably not. But it's still fun. It's funny. I was surprised. I binge watched 4.5 seasons of it.
And what did you think?
Well, the first episode, I sat there and was thoroughly perplexed because I didn't know what they were saying.
Right.
And so I ended up having to Google a lot of what they were saying to figure out, because there is some slang thrown around that I've never heard of before.
Yeah.
And I hope that's how people in Letterkenny actually talk. I really do. I feel like, because they're so fast, so witty. But I learned a lot of Canadian slang.
Nice.
Over this last weekend.
Well done, bro.
Yes, I know. I'm excited to go visit Tannis and Dorn, and with my buddies, and share some of my newfound slang. I think it'll be fun.
Nice. Yeah, you were telling me yesterday that you were surprised by the use of the actual F word.
Yeah, I didn't understand that, because they would say effing, the actual F word, but then say the letter A. F and A, buddy. And I didn't get why you would say the F word, but abbreviate the A word, and then say buddy. That part didn't make sense.
Yeah. Different world, man.
Oh, man. It's a good show. Funny.
Yeah. I culturally, so interesting. I think, you talk to Aussies, folks from New Zealand, South Africa, around the world, you name it. And people are interesting.
So I found out Letterkenny is actually named after a town in Ireland. So it's originally settled by a bunch of Irish folk. So I'd like to take a point of, again, basically a penal colony. Those people are funny.
Yeah,
There's something about captivity and depression that forces you to be funny. Australia.
Yeah.
They're all funny.
Yeah.
New Zealanders, are they a penal colony?
Not really, no.
No,
not in the same way, no. They're not as funny, though. They're just not.
No, I don't think they've had as much depression.
Oppression.
And depression. I mean, depression follows oppression.
Yeah, the Scottish and the Irish, especially, they're
funny folk, man.
They have a dark wit. Absolutely. Definitely. So, that's funny. So we'll get into this show. Hope you enjoy it. Let us know what you think. We always appreciate your comments. Appreciate all you're doing. Leave us a review on iTunes. It always helps us out. Stay gritty, folks. We're back here at Wilde Arrow, and we got Jeremiah here on the left. Flyer. What's Flyer? Is that like Czechoslovakian
I need
or
to
something?
find out, actually. I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
They were big wherever they came from.
It's pretty clear where you came from.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just a ginger.
Yeah.
You're some kind of ginger. It's probably Scottish, Irish,
Dutch, something.
But definitely stubborn. We were having a talk offline about front of center. We're gonna talk a little bit about that in a minute. But before we do that, Jeremiah, I want to know your thoughts on the compound versus crossbow in the event of apocalypse.
Oh, see, I'm glad you brought this up because I've been thinking about it.
We have these talks a lot.
Yeah, so I'm definitely not a crossbow guy. It takes too long to reload. They're too loud. See, if I'm going that, I'm actually skipping even compound. I'm going trad. So,
Yeah,
see?
he brings them
rapid
You can reload so fast. Now, I'm not very accurate with them, but I can fire a lot of ammo really quick.
Yeah.
So,
they come in herds, so you just flock shoot.
yeah. It's not precision. You're just,
Right.
You're just sending arrows.
I think you're right.
Do you have to, like,
I mean, what if you made like 100, 200 arrows? Plus, you could make those out of.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
Trad bow.
Bent aluminum arrow or something. Yeah. Grandpa's old aluminum.
Yeah, you're just sending them into a flock, so it doesn't have to be.
I haven't watched
precise.
the show. What's that? The show where they're always The Walking Dead, or yeah. I don't know. Do you have to shoot them in the head, or what is that?
Yeah,
a headshot. So you do have to be more accurate than what I'm thinking. Then
yeah.
What was that film you said I need to go watch?
Zombieland.
Zombieland.
Yeah, that's a good show.
Yeah. Rule number one: you got to double tap every time.
I have not seen Zombieland.
My number one weapon would probably be.
Is it scary? I'm not into scary.
It's more comedy driven.
Yeah,
it's a lot more comedy driven.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
There you have it, folks. Basically, the crossbow is all just Hollywood manufactured rubbish.
Yeah.
We're talking about two experts here who are trad bow all the way in that scenario.
Trad.
Yeah. But he did bring up a point, like being able to shoot them at 50 yards, like keeping them at distance would be nice.
I figure if they could send out there and have a second to shoot them at 70, 80 as they're working their way in.
You're screwed, though, if they're within 10 yards.
If they're within 10...
They seem too slow. Like, what are you worried about? They move slow.
Well,
they're dead. Know. Okay. Yeah. Moving on. We had a discussion earlier that I would like to dive into. I was mentioning setting up my new bow and arrow rig, which I'm in the process of doing. And I'm using those Black Eagle X Impact shafts, and I want to put the new outsert on the front and still achieve extreme FOC kind of setup, but without doing the Brent Hans method with the Valkyrie shaft. I want to compare the two.
Right.
And then Brent sells his Blood Eagle broadhead that you guys have some experience with, that would made up to that, which would go on any arrow.
Yeah, standard thread.
Mm-hmm. And you were mentioning VAP had something as well. But we got into this debate with our ginger friend here, Cody, on whether FOC matters or doesn't matter. And there's quite a few people who are like, it's stupid. FOC is stupid.
Right.
You don't need it, just a heavy arrow. So why don't you two have that discussion now that the camera's rolling?
I just like to play good cop, bad cop. It's just so much fun in that way.
He just knows how to push my buttons and get me fired up. That's great.
It. It's so much fun.
Because I was saying one of the reasons I like the Valkyrie setup is the experience that I've had, first-hand experience with it so far.
Right.
It has not given me, it's able to punch through brush.
Yep.
It's able to go through wind and stay on target, and it's able to, when it goes in, I don't need to have the perfect shot angle in order to, meaning I can kind of shoot it at most animals from any angle toward the violet.
You don't have to wait for that broadside.
Exactly. And yeah, you have people who are still pushing like a mechanical broadhead.
Right. I like mechanical. I'm not opposed to mechanical. I've killed same with Cody. I've killed a lot of animals with mechanical broadheads, and I've had a lot of really good successes. And kind of what Cody talked about earlier is it depends on the scenario. You get that animal quartering towards you, and you're dealing with that shoulder. Maybe you pull towards that shoulder on a shot. You're really wishing you would have launched a fixed blade broadhead at that point. But you do that same shot, and Cody had this experience last year where you shoot and hit a little far back. You're going, oh, man, I wish I would have had a mechanical because I want to cut as big as a hole as I can now. So it really determines on, kind of those shots of where are you, if you're going to miss, which direction you're missing, of what broadhead do you want,
Right. Yep.
And so talk to 1,000 guys that come into the shop, and we hear 1,000 different opinions on this all the time. And so kind of what I look at is I take all that information that I get from real world feedback from customers and go, all right, what is the best setup? What is the best scenario? And for the average archer that goes out there that maybe is not as good of a shot, what arrow system can I build this guy to where when he does make a poor shot, that's going to bail him out? That's what I look at, because any product out there really, that we've shot and sold for however years now, it's killed a lot of animals. It's worked great.
Right.
But I want to build a system to where when I mess up and I make a bad shot, I want something to bail me out. And I've been doing this for so long, and I've seen new technology come out. And now, GRUNT with the Valkyrie system. I'm a believer of the FOC. I think there's a lot of advantages to it. And, just from the results that I've personally seen and the feedback that I've got, that's how I like to build my arrows and how I like to build a lot of my customers' arrows now.
And you were mentioning earlier about penetration with this system, and you mentioned you recommended people watch a video by Born and Raised. Yeah, so Born and Raised was doing some testing last year where they're taking all these arrows and shooting them into plywood. They were checking penetration, and I won't lie, I didn't catch the whole video, but I was walking by the TV out front, and I caught this little clip where they were sitting there holding an arrow, and they're like, "This is one of the heaviest arrows in the test." He draws it back and he shoots it into this plywood, and it doesn't penetrate very well. And they all kind of stand back and they're going like, "Well, wow, like why did that happen?" Right? Like, you think it's heavy, you think it's going to get the result you want, and it doesn't. And so what I've been trying to educate guys on, especially with FOC, is a terminology we call arrow yield. And what that is the straighter you can get your arrow to impact the target, the better it drives, the better it penetrates. And I use this analogy up at our counter all the time. It's, imagine if you take a nail and a straight nail into a board versus you take a bent nail into a board and you hit them each one with a hammer. Well, what's going to happen there? So the straight nail, obviously, it's going to drive through. It's going to go all the way and seat. But a bent nail, when you hit it, it's probably going to bend over, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's what arrow yield is on target. So the more that arrow is flexed and bent when it hits the target, that energy is not getting driven straight through the animal. And so what I've kind of seen and why it made me a believer of the higher FOC arrow shafts is, guys that come in here and go, "Well, I like a 500 grain arrow." I'm like, "Yeah, I do too. But I just like all my weight on the front of that arrow," right? And the reason being is when you take a high FOC arrow like this with Brent's system, that arrow, I have a theory that it recovers so much faster out of the bow versus if you were to take like a heavy arrow that's maybe like 12 grains per inch, you build it to say 500 grains, and you fire that arrow, and it has a lot of time of flexing and bending. It's still wobbling a bit. It's still wobbling, the paradox. Mm-hmm. And so on those shorter range shots, that arrow hasn't had a chance to recover, and that's what you sacrifice. So anyway, when you get these arrows to stabilize sooner, which the FOC starts to pull the front of the arrow, kind of like a semi pulling a trailer down the road, it pulls everything straight. That's why we see a huge increase of penetration. So kind of going back to that video, you can take a lighter, stiffer arrow that was maybe not as much weight, but it's lighter and stiffer, and the arrow hits that target or the piece of wood straighter. That's what's helping that arrow drive through all that stuff. And so, light, stiff, weight up front has kind of been what I think is the new age of how to build arrows, in my opinion. So now, Cody kind of argued with you on that earlier because you've had a lot of experience with more of a standard setup, and you killed a lot of animals.
Yeah. I've gone anywhere from just a standard arrow that weighs 385 grains with a rear deploying mechanical, and I've blown completely through an elk and completely through deer at 70 yards.
Right.
Now people will be like, "That's 70 yards. That's a long shot. You shouldn't be taking those shots." But I felt like the setup and the situation was right to do it. Let's be honest. There's some people out in this industry that can shoot very, very well at distance. Right. And so, I like to just be the bad guy on the other side of the fence. It's like, look at the other options too, where if you make a bad shot, like Jay said, the wrong direction, I like that cutting diameter. I like the surface area that I'm going to cut. Now, granted, the right mechanical and the right one makes a big difference. But I've sent some stuff where I've been very fortunate to have the mechanical. I don't always make good shots. There's been some shots where I was just off just a little bit, and anything I think to that back area. I would prefer the mechanical in that situation. If you send one through the paunch, I would recommend, I'd refer to a mechanical in that situation. Bigger cutting surface, maybe I catch liver, maybe I catch something else. Create more hemorrhage, more damage, for sure.
Yeah, so, but let me just play the other side of that.
Play that.
What about, I mean, it's not like mechanical blades are that stout.
No.
Right.
You know,
they do yield a lot on bone.
Yeah, they tend to become dull quite easily. You just nick them and they're not sharp anymore.
Yeah.
They can bend. And so let's say they do hit the gut area or something, the paunch. They're also going to get a lot of drag. I mean, as soon as they hit grass, they're not going anywhere inside the stomach. Where I feel like something like that Valkyrie, it's just so razor sharp, that once it goes through, it's going coast to coast through those vitals. And you have there's, I feel, a difference between snagging something and cutting it versus cutting it with the finest perfect razor blade.
Right.
And if you can have that fine razor blade go from one end of the paunch to the other end of the paunch, do you not think maybe you'll have even more surface area sliced and bleeding than you would if you had a wide blade that just kind of tears rather than cuts and maybe gets...
Yeah, I mean, we have that theory. There's a lot of that going around with, especially the two-blade stuff out nowadays. Like your single-bevel two-blade stuff. Guys are like, your penetration's awesome, they're breaking through bone, but they're not creating that multi-directional cut that's harder to heal, right? So even if my expendable, a good example I refer back to is we were on a hunt. We tried to get actually Jeremiah's wife in on this elk. We get down in position, we get set up, we call it in. She was like, "You shoot it. You called it in. You shoot it." I wanted her to shoot it, but she's like, "You shoot it." And I was like, "If you tell anybody that I shot it."
He shot it from underneath.
From underneath.
Just be honest. He's trying to go around that.
You're going to have to cover me. And
it was supposed to be her
She's like, no, I want to watch. So she watched me shoot it. And so I shot it with a mechanical. And it was on an angle. The first mechanical goes through. Great shot. Send it right through her. She didn't know what was going on. She runs out. She's standing there. So I'm going to get another shot, right? But I don't know how she lived. Me and his wife sit there and we still go back and think of how she was standing there because she just was pouring blood the whole time standing there. But me wanting to finish it a little bit cleaner, I'm like, I'm going to get another shot. So I sneak over, get another shot, make it what I feel is a great shot, quartering away, all the way up through. Came from the back all the way up through, lodged all the way up, and it stopped at the shoulder. But when we cleaned her out, it did some serious damage all the way up through. And what I feel like it would now, granted, if I would have maybe had a Valkyrie, I could have punched out that other shoulder.
Right.
But would that really have done that much more than what I did all the way up to that point?
I think as long as you hit soft tissue, it's going to work pretty well.
Right. And that's my goal. My goal is to make as good a shot as I can, get the right angle. There's a lot of shots out there that, looking back, if I would have had a Valkyrie, maybe I would have taken them because I could have punched through some of those.
You didn't have to wait for it to be perfect.
Right, but growing up, my dad was always very ethical. He always took very high quality shots. And so I've always been taught that. And so I will wait. And if I don't get that shot, I won't take that shot. And so I just like having a good, now if it's a quartering away shot, I'm going to send it because there's a lot more soft tissue. And if I get it up into this heavy stuff and it stops, great. But I'm getting it way up into the cavity from the back and it's going to do some damage. Now, the opposite way, coming from the front, I will, Valkyrie's going to punch through. But I'm like, just that shot, I've seen so many good. But in my opinion, up until this, it hasn't been out so many years.
This is the game changer. Right?
That's a game changer. Right. So you give it 4 or 5 more years, that whole theory might completely be changed. But up until this point, you still watch videos nowadays on there where there's people taking frontal shots and they're losing more animals than they are harvesting. And so I'm like, it's still a risky shot. It needs to be taken at the right angle, at the right distance, with the right setup. And so it gets risky. Now, a quartering away shot at 30 to 50 yards, I'm sending it. I mean, I've shot my biggest mule deer to date was at 45 yards downhill. I was kind of slightly above him, so I stuck it through the back part of his rib, all the way through, punched out, and where his ribs and sternum come together, blew completely through that with a that arrow was just a gold tip kinetic that year. Wasn't crazy weight, maybe 412, 100 grain broadhead, G5 dead meat, rear deploy, punched clean through him.
So I'm like, I see the advantages of this, and I like to just give everyone crap about them. But I also see the advantages of my mechanicals. I've had huge holes, huge blood trails. I may not get full pass-throughs, but when that arrow penetrates, I'm getting a lot of blood recovery. And so I've just always, I guess it's just the old mentality of stay away from the front half, back of that pocket of the elbow, pocket back.
I think you are,
you
severely restricted on the shot options when you're shooting the style that you're talking about.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why I don't like it.
Right.
Because not only is it the shot selection on the animal and its angle, it's also the shot selection given brush in the way, given wind, given like other factors too.
Yeah. I don't shoot through brush. Now, granted, perfect example.
He's a liar.
So no. I do have one example of brush, but there are other factors that kind of don't help me. I shot this buck. I stalked in on him. Don't know how I did it, but like we talked about earlier off camera, the wind factor. There was a little bit of wind. He didn't hear me. He was at the end of this deadfall. I got to the end of the deadfall before I'm standing at the end of the deadfall. I'm like, there's no way that this thing is still here. He had to hear me, smell me, see me, something.
Yeah.
I take one step out, and he stands up at 10 steps. Like, he's right there.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. I already had an arrow knocked, slightly quartering away. That's that picture I showed you. Shooting a Rage, hypodermic, just a really light arrow. I think it was 404 on that arrow that year. Granted, he's at 10 yards, but there's a pine tree between me and him. But it's kind of opened up. It's sparse, not real thick. And I'm like, screw it. Here we go. And I send that thing right through the pine tree and right into him. Granted, 10 yards.
Right.
He was right on the backside of the pine tree. Not a whole lot of room for deflection.
Yeah.
Full pass through. So it's very situational based for me. 100%.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is just because we're shooting this, you can't just be careless, right?
Right.
Like still, you still got to make sure, okay, the situation allows. But kind of going back to like when we talk about mechanicals and how popular they are, is because guys get frustrated trying to tune a fixed blade, right? They go to that.
That's our biggest reason why we do experimental.
Number one reason why guys go to mechanical over fixed.
They can't tune a fixed.
Yeah, and if their bow comes out of tune slightly, they're back in here in July, and we've got a line of guys around the door going, hey, my bow's out of tune. And it's literally just one guy after the next. We're double checking everything. And there's so many variables get played into that. You throw a mechanical on, all those go away. Yeah, it's all gone. Well. Yep. But I kind of do feel like, again, running.
It's kind of a Band-Aid, or it treats a symptom, but not the cause.
Exactly right. Yeah. And again, I tell guys, especially with the Valkyrie, it might be overkill for a majority of the situations we talk about. Like a mule deer, that's not the same animal as a big bull elk, right? It's not even in the same category. But here in Utah, where we get to hunt both species, you get a guy he's going to run this, he's going to shoot on those species. Now, for years in Utah, what I used to do is I did run a mechanical for mule deer, but I also ran a fixed blade for elk. I'd have both broadheads in my quiver because I could get them to tune the same point of impact. Yep. And the reason why I told guys that I did that is, I've shot fixed blades to 100 yards. I've done it. I've shot good groups. The X factor is that fixed blade broadhead beyond 60 yards in the wind that was difficult. Yeah. And that's where that's where guys like Cody's talked about, hey, I've had pass-throughs on deer at 70 yards. Well, typically mechanicals in those scenarios, they fly bare in the wind, and when they get there, they still cut some big holes. But at that distance, that arrow's had a chance to recover and be so straight.
I've had arrow yield.
Back to the arrow yield. I've had more pass-throughs on animals beyond 45 yards than I have under. Yep. Because the arrow is recovered, I've had better penetration. I've had more pass-throughs. But kind of looking back at that, some of my setups now, I go, well, if I'm running a high FOC arrow like this, they say a typical setup, a guy's running, 7-8% FOC, which is pretty typical with a guy running 100 grain broadhead, right? Yep. If you get that arrow to leave the bow perfectly every time, great. It's even with a fixed blade, it's going to do what you want. Right. But if that guy maybe puts a little bit of torque and makes a bad shot, or you're trying to balance that arrow from the middle. And in the back end, your vanes now play a much more critical role of stabilizing what's going on the front. So I go back to my semi analogy, like an arrow with not high FOC, you have to have more vane on the back to stabilize what's going on the front. And the more vane you put here, guess what happens? Wind is a much bigger factor with that bigger vane. Yep. Every time I've built arrows with lighter stiffer, more weight up front, because this again acts like a semi pulling the trailer behind it, I can reduce vane surface area on the rear end of the shaft. Yep. And the high FOC arrow, it's kind of funny. It doesn't fly straight in a heavy crosswind. It actually flies at a slight angle. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But the impact stays the same.
Yeah.
Now, an arrow without a high FOC...
good penetration as well.
Oh, phenomenal, yeah. Mm-hmm. But an arrow without high FOC, what we typically see is it'll even shift. Yeah. So it's going to fly straight, but it's going to also impact off of where you're aiming. And so, anyway, why I brought that up, though, is kind of with the mechanicals and kind of putting a Band-Aid on it. It's like, well, if I can build a guy's arrow with a higher FOC and let the broadhead and the weight pull the shaft and steer it through the air, he can still get phenomenal fixed blade groups to distance now. It kind of solves that problem in my eyes and go...
Yeah. It helps with the wind.
Helps with the wind. Arrow yield, steers from the front more versus the rear.
Yeah. And there are some advantages there for sure.
Yeah, and so it kind of makes a guy go, well, maybe I can get away from shooting a mechanical if I build my arrows the right way. And you don't necessarily have to run, like the center pin. Like you talked about, his Blood Eagle broadheads work really well if you're trying to get that weight up. But with the newer advancements of carbon arrow shafts now, we're getting arrows that are much lighter and stiffer than we could even get 5-6 years ago, right? Like those weren't even available back then.
Yeah, I'm excited to use the Black Eagle's new outsert, and then you were describing like a pin that goes inside that kind of helps that whole system. So you have arrow manufacturers already moving into this realm that Brent's been playing in Valkyrie for a while. We're going to have those options on the market moving forward. It's just it's proving to be too useful.
Well, I think what kind of really stopped the micro diameter fad from taking off more than it had is the shafts were great, but it was the components on the front end were terrible. I mean, the only company I really liked for the longest time was a Fire Knock outsert from Dorge. I mean, that was a solid outsert. You could still ran a standard threaded broadhead, and it worked really well. But when Brent designed this new center pin, he used kind of a similar concept. You got to protect the front of that shaft, but with his center pin, you're still getting the broadhead to perfectly align to the center of the arrow now. And so you don't get that deviation of that, where it's hard to balance it. And so, and you're right, a lot of companies now, like, Black Eagle and even Victory, we have a bunch of those new Victory inserts on order. We haven't got them in yet, hopefully any day now, but they're kind of looking at him and going, all right, this is what's working. And we'll see. I mean, I'm always a little skeptical until we get those in. I start building guys' arrows and we go run them. Right. But looking at it and looking at the prototypes, I'm like, hey, the concept is there. Let's see if it can prove itself now.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited to play with the various designs. Right. I find myself watching hunting videos like Born and Raised, I'll be, especially elk posty, and I see a guy come to full draw on the animal, and he's waiting for what Cody would wait for.
Yeah,
the perfect
shot
angle, because he's shooting maybe a mechanical broadhead. Right. He knows that he needs to be hitting some soft tissue. He knows that the animal needs to be in a certain position.
Right.
And I'm sitting there watching the show, just going, shoot him already! Like just shoot him right there, because he doesn't really have that option with that arrow. Mm-hmm. And if you'd asked me 2 years ago, it wouldn't even have crossed my mind. I wouldn't even have thought, take that shot.
Right.
I would have just been like, you got to wait. You got to wait till that shoulder comes forward or that leg comes forward. You got to wait or whatever. Now, I truly, seeing my arrow go coast to coast on every animal I've shot with the Valkyrie, I've never not had a pass through. And only that, most of the time I'm hitting some kind of bone that's fairly substantial. Arrow goes beyond the animal, out the other side, and buries itself deep into the earth.
Right.
I mean, and then I pull the head out and the arrow, and it's like new. I have every arrow I've killed an animal with is back in my quiver like new.
Right.
I'm sharpening, and I'm good. That right there, for me, is just
Peace of mind.
Yeah, being able to take a shot at any angle is powerful. Think about how many opportunities are lost.
We hear that story all the time.
I haven't had the chance yet this year. I do have some arrows set up this year that I will go run on Valkyrie, and just for you, big guy, I will wait for the bad shot. And if he's standing there 70 yards, I'll be like, nope. And I'm going to circle around, wind or not, and I'm going to shoot it straight in the front and be like, Brian's call said I could do it. So as far as ethics are concerned,
I'm waiting for all the hate.
Hashtag Brian call, hashtag shoot it in the shoulder.
Well, you guys have had a lot of guys that you've sold a lot of these systems through your shop.
Yeah.
They've just been on demand.
Yeah.
And
we're going to stop letting it be shot at the shop, though.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they may not be able to see the viewers, but we expanded, and so we moved a different room in the back and shortened down our range a little bit. And you know when a guy's shooting a Valkyrie, because even with brand new block targets, you just hear it hit the wall, and you're like, please just be a bad shot and stop shooting the same spot, because you're going to punch through.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask that. What has been the overall feedback in terms of performance, both in the tuning and the setup, but also in the actual killing? I'm mostly interested in people's results in shooting animals.
They shoot hot tubs really well.
Yeah.
We had a guy actually miss and shoot one.
No, he went through his target.
Through the target, into the hot tub.
Yeah, they don't stop.
They didn't
guys
stop.
Our target cells are great, because guys are having to come back. They're having to buy two and put two of them together now, because one just doesn't stop it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's funny. Like, I'll be out with a bunch of guys. We'll land someplace like BC or whatever, and they'll pull out some target,
and you're like,
and they're
I
like,
can't shoot it.
I'm all, yeah, that's not enough.
It won't stop it.
That's not. That doesn't work. And then, sure enough, it's true. Like, my arrow will go through their targets, while their arrows are just barely stopping.
Well, and that, we've heard that same feedback. I mean, when we started carrying the Valkyrie, which is a little over a year ago, I think, took me a lot of convincing to let Brent let us carry it and stock here. But I understood the concept. I knew what he was building, and now I'm probably building 6 or 7 setups a week of Valkyrie system for customers, and it's very interesting to see the snowball effect starting to come into play, where we set up one guy, he goes and shoots with his buddies, and those 2 guys come back in the next week going, we want what he's shooting.
Yeah. Right.
And it's been really neat, and we're selling a lot of it. I mean, it's been really popular.
We've got some feedback from some guys, good customer of ours, bought a whole bunch of it. First animal he killed was his bear. He shot a big bear. Can't remember the exact yardage, but he's like,
it was like 36 yards.
He's like, it blew clear through the bear, way beyond the bear, like you said, into a tree. Me and the guide pulled out both of our knives, trying to dig it out. He sent pictures. He's like, it didn't even phase it. Didn't even slow down. Blew through the bear.
Anybody like hit a moose or an elk with it, like go through bones, shoulders?
I haven't seen any pictures or feedback with that yet.
You can find that stuff on Brent's page.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Valkyrie Archery.
Still fairly.
The only first-hand experience that I've had with that was my wife when she killed her bull in Idaho last year, and I set her up with the Valkyrie system, and for her it kind of goes back to what we talked about with Cody. She's short draw, low poundage. I've always been really critical on her shot angles on elk, and I cannot tell you how many times she's been at full draw, and that animal's a little quartered, and she's like, I'm going to wait for it to turn broadside. And it turns the other way and walks off. Just time after time, right?
Or above it, because her arrow's so short.
Yeah.
If she didn't get enough penetration, her arrow would probably penetrate through like an above shot and not come out the front.
No blood trail.
So
Had
short.
that happen.
So short. Yeah.
And her bull last year, I mean, she's 25-inch draw, 55 pounds, and she was shooting a Jaeger 175 with a 420 grain arrow, and the bull, I called this bull in for just a nice little raghorn 4x5, and about 45 yards, and it was pretty
fast. Is her arrow? How much is that shaft weigh again?
It was 420. It was our total arrow build, and I bet with her setup, she was only probably in the 240s, I want to say. Okay. So not fast at all.
Right.
So trajectory is a little bit of a harder factor for her, right? But I mean, and she made a great shot. I mean, it was quartering towards her pretty hard, and she just perfectly did tuck it right behind the shoulder, but. To come in at that steep of an angle and still to exit out as far back as it did and get a pass through. And same thing, we grabbed her arrow and I'm like, put it in your quiver. Let's go shoot another one. Like it was perfect. So
25-inch draw, 420 grain arrow. quarter in two slightly.
Yep.
And that arrow passed all the way through.
All the way through. Yep.
That's pretty. Because my cousin Ben, I think he has a 27-inch draw 26. Maybe it's 25. He's a little man.
Right.
And he has killed 3 bulls with his bow, like 3 big bulls.
Right.
And he has never had an arrow pass through. And he's typically shot like a slick trick or like a G5, like a fixed blade broadhead. And
here we go.
Yeah.
Let him tell his story.
Every animal, so he's killed, I can think of almost every bull he's ever killed, the arrow is in about 6 to 10 inches maybe, and it stops.
Right.
Every single one, his bull is laying on the ground with an arrow sticking out of the side of it.
Disclaimer, these two get a little bit crazy and amped up when they shoot, so we'll let Jeremiah tell his bull story last year.
Yeah, so
because I was going to say,
Rambo.
For her, she has a lighter arrow,
right,
a shorter draw length, and a steeper angle than what Ben has shot his animals at, and she's getting a pass through, and he's getting halfway through.
So one of the big variables with that though is not just the FOC. I think that helps, but where I think Brent really nailed it, in my opinion, is the actual broadhead design.
Yeah,
right?
It's the design. 100%.
Yeah, and so. So anyway, me and my wife last year in Idaho both had elk tags. She killed her bull, and then we still had to hunt for mine. Matter of fact, I'd missed a bull during the hunt, and missed Judge's range anyway. So he runs off. You know how that stings. And the last weekend of the hunt, I get off work and I'm like, I'm going back. Like, it's bugging me. It's been eating at me all week. So take my son. We get up there and we hunt a couple days, pretty close calls. Just don't kill anything. Well, we sneak into this water hole, and I have this bull come around right on us. And pretty cool experience to have him there. Anyway, comes around the water hole, stops at 17 yards, quartering towards me. And I am not shooting the Valkyrie system. I ran out of time. I just got so busy through the summer. I actually ended up hunting with an old bow setup because that's the only one I trusted that was shooting. So, I'm running a 436 grain arrow, 125 grain slip trick fixed blade on the front. That was the Viper trick, so it kind of has the bigger cut with the smaller, the 7/8 bleeders, right? And anyway, bull comes around. I'm at full draw, 17 yards, and there's one stick, so I don't have a shot. The bull turns to run, and I'm thinking, I just blew it, right? That was my chance. And so that bull does the whole stop and look back kind of a thing. And so I send one, end up spining the elk, and he drops. Well, you kind of go into panic mode because I've seen times where animals do that and they get up and run. So I start feeling like, what's his name? Legolas off
Legolas off of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, so
he's amazing, by the way.
Yeah, so I just start. I'm afraid this bull's going to get up and run, so I just start pumping arrows at 24 yards. He's thrashing at 24 yards, and so I shot him 2 more times. And had 2 more arrows in the lungs and realized, all right, he's going to die. But after sitting there I felt bad, he's sitting there. So I shot the 4th arrow into him just because I'm like, you know what? I want to put this thing out of its misery. I don't want it to suffer. Yep. I want to be as ethical as possible. And even though, you know how it is being a hunter, like you have those mixed emotions, right?
For sure. I've seen this happen a lot. I've mentioned this before. Animals that get spined seem to take a ton of arrows through the vitals to die.
It was a weird, and so, but what was interesting for me after that is going, I'm shooting a 77, 78 pound bow, 436 grain arrow, and I've blown through mule deer with this setup, no problem. Well, after we go up to recover the elk, I only had 1 arrow go through that elk. And so the first shot with the spine, I'm going, okay, like, can't blame that, right? That's just poor shot placement on my part of hunting, it happens. But the next 3 shots at 24 yards, I'm going, only 1 arrow to get through there? Like that really baffled me. And so, but after I started kind of putting it all together and seeing, the feedback we're getting from the Valkyrie and seeing my firsthand experiences going, man, at 24 yards, with my draw length and poundage, I'm expecting that arrow to be through that bull and buried 8 inches in the mud behind him type of a thing. And so what I kind of look at and I tell guys, because there's so many guys trying to educate themselves about high FOC and the advantage, and it's a new concept
for the money.
It's a new concept, right? Guys are not fully wrapped their head around it yet, and so what I tell guys, I'm like, building a good arrow with high FOC is a good starting point, but the broadhead design behind that is also a critical factor. And so, not to pick on my my slick tricks, but I'm going, those broadheads, because of the blade angle, gets a lot more pucker effect into, skin and hide and tissue before it actually gets to penetrate into.
And it makes kind of a square hole or a triangle hole rather than a slit that I've seen close up on a 2-blade.
Yep, because it tears the hide. And so anyway, just kind of looking back, I go, man, like after seeing the experience and what happened with my wife's bull and how well her system performed, and granted, did I kill an elk? Yes, no doubt about it. But I'm going, man, I can see more of the advantages of this system now. And hey, I want to pass her at 24 yards. And it goes back to what we talked about with arrow paradox in the beginning, going, well, this system works on multiple levels. It's not just one concept that works. It's the high FOC, it's the broadhead design, it's less arrow yield on impact. It's all those factors that combine together that really makes the big difference. If you take one of those elements away, the system doesn't work quite as well.
Yeah, that's why I'm very curious about the Blood Eagle put onto another shaft and outsert system, because I do agree on the actual broadhead design being really, really well done.
I would agree.
And I've never had a broadhead that has the sharpness and retains the sharpness like this. Like this is high. It's like, I kind of mentioned, this is like having a high quality knife.
Yeah.
As a broadhead.
It's pretty good. Don't ask what happened to the paper earlier. When we were waiting for you to get done with the customer, we were playing with that one actually, which is just that blank demo one that we've got. That's not sharp, so we can handle it and customers can handle it. Me and Brian threw it through this paper just point blank, and it cut it very quickly. Yeah. Like it's pretty impressive.
It's still razor sharp. And that's kind of why I want to play with maybe not as much FOC, but the actual broadhead, and see what kind of performance I get.
So, and I'm a big fan of his Blood Eagle, and I think that's the perfect broadhead to give a guy a taste of what his broadhead design is all about, right? Because I do think there's some things going on here that makes it superior. But one thing that I've been trying to tell guys, because I have a lot of guys coming and asking, well, I just want to try the Blood Eagle and go around it. I'm like, and that's fine. It's a good broadhead, but where I see issues and I warn customers on is the fact that when you're running a broadhead like this, it does get through that hide and that skin so fast, the majority of that energy is left over on bone impact. And unless your component on the front of your arrow shaft can handle that, what ends up happening a lot of times is that insert or the arrow itself just yields and bends before the broadhead gets done doing its job. And so I just tell guys, like, if you are going to build an arrow system that you're not using the center pin and you're going to use a Blood Eagle broadhead, that's great. It's a great broadhead design. Just make sure that the front of your arrow, the insert that you're running, can handle that load and that stress, because compared to like a normal arrow where it's not high FOC, the arrow is kind of driving from the rear. When you get that driving from the front and all that energy hits, there's a lot of pressure that gets put on the front of that shaft, and you'll blow out the side of arrows or have insert failure. And so you blame the system.
That's why you build the Jaeger, the Jagger head, to actually have the center pin.
Right, 100%.
It stiffens it up, so the yield point gets transferred way back, and generally it's through the bone, and it's reduced that pressure by the time it gets to that point, so it usually doesn't break.
I shot BC bear, and it blew up the leg bone, went through into the dirt and buried itself. I shot my buck in Alabama or Ohio. Yep, Montana too. Ohio, I shot Big Sexy through basically the rear hip, coast to coast through the entire innards, like his whole length of his body, and it came out the other side and buried in the dirt. And I shot that Montana mule deer.
Wasn't it a coos deer you posted a picture of, where the bone was just like shrapnel?
I shot that one as well. They're little, so I think a lot of arrows could have done the same thing.
Right.
But yeah, the broadhead went right through that coos deer, broke both a rib on the way in and the rib on the way out, and just shattered it.
Right.
So the one that exploded was the bear, which I never got video of, but the mule deer in Montana. It broke a rib on the way in, and then exited through the thickest part of the leg on the offside shoulder.
So you killed so many animals, I just can't keep up with it anymore. You gotta,
it exploded it like a bullet.
We need to go hunt more stuff so we have more test subjects.
Well, I really wanted to shoot a moose with it.
Yeah.
I just never got that opportunity, and I got a couple of good stocks on my moose hunt with a bow, but it turned out to be like a 4-day hunt, like a real quick hunt.
Oh, gotcha.
And I ended up, it was my last day. I just brought the rifle out and took one.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I never got to test it. I was really excited to see how it would do.
We do have guys going right now. We've got a couple guys that are going to Africa.
Yep, a lot of guys doing Africa hunts this spring.
They're coming up pretty soon, June. They're going to go shoot some big critters.
We did have a customer do bison last year with this setup and loved it. He said it performed really well for him. So I mean, feedback-wise, I couldn't really tell you, like, anybody that's come back in that's shot it goes, man, this didn't work for me, or I didn't like it, and so, but one thing that I still look at with this, where, a lot of guys think that they're having to build these super, super heavy arrows, and like, don't get me wrong, I like a heavy arrow, but I still like trajectory. We're, we're not just shooting every animal at 30 yards out here. We're still shooting some, 60, 70, possibly 80-yard shots.
We have to shoot farther than 40 yards.
Yeah. And so, but, I think my arrow out of my bow is like 494. I'm running pretty much dead on at 20% FOC. Out of my Duralington poundage, I still think I'm in the 290s with it. Last I checked, so I'm getting the best of all the worlds here. I'm not sacrificing anything there.
My bow is like 80 plus pounds, 28 inches with a 505 grain arrow, and I think I was right at 280. Yeah. And that thing just blowing through everything.
Right.
In the Valkyrie. But my lighter setup was 70 pounds. The Carbon Defiant's a lot slower. It was a 34.
Mm-hmm. And, much slower bow.
Yeah. And on that system, I was shooting 175 grain tip. And I'm shooting was it a 350 shaft?
Yeah.
And just a much lighter set. Right. I think my total arrow weight was still 450 or something like that.
That's reasonable. Yeah.
It's still pretty heavy, right? Yeah. But I was able to get like 275, I think, feet per second with that setup. But I was thinking about this myself with a faster bow and maybe a little higher poundage for me. I can still do an FOC system that shoots laser bolts.
Yeah, you get the best of both worlds if you wanted it.
And I honestly think, and I got to do more testing to prove it, but we've seen some stuff, and I've started to dabble in it, but at, like, say, 70 yards, if you take a normal arrow that's very evenly balanced, that's really heavy, I've felt like out of the setups I've shot that, and from what I've seen, that arrow actually will drop more than if I had the heavier arrow, but or a more forward of center built arrow that's still very heavy, not drop as much. It's carried its trajectory higher,
flatter,
longer than just an overall balanced arrow. And so I got to play with that some more. Yeah, Ashby back in the day talked about that kind of stuff. He had a little demonstration of more FOC, traveled, carried longer, farther.
Well, it seems like that would be the case too, as far as drag, drag, and things like that.
Well, you did get a reduced vanes,
which is
we shot Marcus. We went out the other night and shot his setup and bare shaft with 2 Fletch shafts at 70 yards. The bare shaft hit point of impact just as good as his Fletch shaft. So I'm like, why even? I said, we should do that next year. I'm not shooting fletching. People are like, what is that? Like, this is the new way to go. Like, no vanes at all FOC. You don't need them, right?
You're just running a spear.
Yeah. That's right.
Elk shot, straight on, no fletching. Then I'm going to shoot a deer, both shoulders, no fletching.
That's the goal.
Reduce the drag, get better penetration. Yeah. I don't want to hang up on a fletching that's stuck in a hide.
I hear you. I mean? It's just for looks now.
Yep. It might get to that point, honestly, with how well those arrows are tuning. The carbon's reacting better, lighter, stiffer. The weight's driving it. You honestly don't need a ton.
I think a lot of people focus so much on their arrow. I mean, on their bow and their release and all of that, and they just don't put the same time and energy into crafting the right arrow for their setup. They just don't focus on arrows.
Right.
They just go buy a box of them at Cabela's.
Which is weird, because you get the rifle guy, and he's like so focused on the ballistics and the hand loading and the bullet part of it.
It is a marriage, though. Like between the bow and the arrow, they work together.
And you need them both.
This part is just as vital as
the business
it's
end.
the part you're putting in the animal.
Right. Well, and you know what we do now, I mean, you know, with all these builds we're doing, guys are bringing us their bows, and we are finding the optimal tune for that guy's bow. And maybe one guy's bow, his drawing and poundage needs that 250 spine. Me, I didn't want to go to the 250 because I didn't want that heavy of a grains per inch arrow, because you go up in grains per inch, I had to then load that much more weight on the front to get it up.
FOC needle.
That's what I've got on my setup, is 250 with a 200 grain tip.
I'm able to get my setup. I'm running just a 300 spine arrow.
Yeah.
Now, I'm kind of pretty short. Like, there's not a lot of room from the back of that collar to my rest. You know, what we're doing for guys kind of goes back to the businesses. We're not just, you know, saying, oh, here's your, you know, have at it. If guys want us to, and we're custom building this Valkyrie, when we charge for it, I mean, we've got to charge for our time and expertise, but I'll take a guy's bow back here, and I have multiple arrows cut at different lengths, different spines, and I'll play around with different tip weights till where I find that guy's bow, what arrow it likes to deliver the best, what fires the best out of that. And then I go, hey, this is the magical recipe. I take it out to my fletching guys and go, build me 12 of these, have at it. And so then they know exactly how to build for that guy. And so when he comes and picks his bow up, it's dialed.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I noticed on this arrow here, and Jordan and I've seen you guys use quite a helical on some of these arrows. I mean, that one doesn't.
Yeah, just a slight offset on these. On a 4 fletch, we don't like to do a super steep helical, but this fletching pattern came out last year. Arizona Rim Country came out with it. He makes the easy fletch where you can fletch all 3 at once, which I love because I hate fletching arrows.
Yeah.
So when I can fletch all 3 at once, I'm a big fan of it. You know, we were running those, and we've had a lot of customers be some guinea pigs for us, where when we'll build them 6 arrows, we'll build 3 with this 4 fletch and 3 with a heat vane, and we'll let them go out and try them and see what they like. And I would say we probably have more guys lean towards the heat than the 4 fletch.
Really?
Yeah, they don't really, you know, they still say they see good grouping, that, you know, don't see any difference there. But with that, it's not just a steep helical. They technically call it true helical. And I guess the guy that kind of came up with this created, he's into launching model rockets. And so the straighter they can get the rocket, and so it stabilizes. Yeah. I know, I'm geeking out over it, right? But anyway, it rotates the arrow faster, but yet creates less drag. And so some of the testing they've done on this, and we've heard this from customers, is when we fletch arrows with that vane combo versus like a standard blazer, they're actually seeing a flatter trajectory at distance. They're losing because there's less drag. It creates the rotation for stability, but yet less drag. And so it's been a popular vane combo. We've had a lot of customers shoot.
It's got a high BC.
Yeah.
The ballistic coefficient on that's very high.
Nice.
Yeah.
Look at it dropping nerdy stuff.
I know.
Yeah, I want to mess around with different fletching setups, and I've done this before with the other guys I've shot with, where build 4 or 5 different same arrow, just different 4 or 5 different fletching combinations, and then they're shooting that and they're seeing what it's doing at 90 yards, 100 yards, and then they're like, you know what, these just group better, you know.
And and I hear that a lot. We played around with thousands of vanes combos. Guys come and ask us all the time, like, what vane? I'm like, well,
6 fletch.
Yeah.
That's
hey,
the way to
I've
go.
done that, actually. I killed a buck with a 6 fletch arrow a couple years ago. I stole that one from Randy Ulmer, by the way.
Yeah.
I seen it. I'm like, I've got to try that.
A 6 fletch and a staggered, Burnworth.
Yeah.
We get crazy.
Yeah.
Backwards fletching. We've done some good stuff.
One of the biggest things for me that I hate, though, is noise. I hate the vane noise. It drives me crazy. And so that's where we started shooting, this 4 fletch is a little bit shorter, stiffer. That heat vane you were just looking at, you got to feel how stiff and rigid it is.
Yeah.
And so it actually cuts through the air really well.
You don't get the flap.
Yeah, you don't get that fluttering noise, and so it quiets down the arrow in flight quite a bit.
I hate a loud fletch,
Yeah,
too.
it drives me crazy. Yeah.
Which one's quieter than that one or this one?
I'd say the heat vane. So with our testing, where
I'd say both.
we have we were shooting where we had a Connex box, and the guys would stand behind it, and we'd go to the street.
Very, very thick steel, so safety was good.
Yeah.
No one was hurt. during
We
this
weren't
training.
shooting Valkyrie at the time, though. So,
yeah, that's true.
but we would shoot past. We wouldn't tell them what arrows we were shooting. We'd have them rate it, but but yeah, consistently, I would say this 4-fletch combo or that heat vane combo from Boning has been in that tree
good,
close.
The
Pretty
quietest,
good.
yeah. I kind of want to whistle on mine.
The whistling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
I mean,
had that before.
It adds some interaction to it. You're like,
Yeah.
psh, and then you
Sounds
hear
like
it
a
hit.
fighter jet
Yeah.
getting at you.
Yeah.
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 Bad news.
It's like a Roman candle shooting at you with a whistling peak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thanks for coming on the podcast. I just creeped in here today, tried to grab a slow moment. You guys are busy.
I was trying to
So-
shoot, and I hear this weird knocking on the back door, and then I
I
see
came in
Brian's
before
face.
the door opened. Ambush.
Dang it.
We're doing a lot of these ambush podcasts. They
Yeah.
seem to work quite well. So,
Nice.
and
Catches a card.
the thing is, you guys are real busy.
Yeah.
You guys are really busy. But if somebody's in the area and they need help, they can come down here to Wilde Arrow. You guys don't know how to spell wild, but
Yeah, we're not the best at that. We can tune a bow though.
Yeah. Hey, that last name's got some good history behind it. So
Yeah.
those
It does.
that Wilde family, if nobody knows who they are, they should look them up. They've
it's
done some good
WILDE.
stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
And and you guys are open. What are your hours?
Monday through Friday, 11 to 7, and then Saturdays from 10 to 5.
Yeah.
So, catch us during the hours, but
You mean open hour? Yeah.
At some point, you guys might have
to.
to raise your prices because, well, you got enough bows to drown.
we have been swimming in bows. We've been a lot of I don't even want to call it late nights anymore. It's early mornings. We're getting off work at 7.
Yep.
Well, closing the doors at 7.
Yeah.
And we've been staying till 3:00 in the morning tuning bows.
Yeah.
But
So all
we
the
love
co-
it, man.
Yeah.
Like it's what we're passionate about, and we love the fact that guys trust us enough to.
What is that camo, that Rambo monstrosity on the wall there?
We don't discriminate. If it fires an arrow, we're tuning
Yeah.
it. Dang
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah,
we
for
don't-
all those that think we don't work on everything, we do. We work on every bow.
That bow. What
manufacturer.
year is that bow?
I'm
And
gonna
what kind is it?
I'm gonna say that's got to be the 80s. That's yeah.
Wow, it's special.
I think it's probably a PSE, but all those bows back then, see, they didn't have camo, so everyone does that sweet handmade,
right.
custom spray paint job on them. So
Yeah, let me see this thing.
oh yeah,
I think
overdraw.
this was
Look
from
at that
the movie
overdraw.
Rambo. Look at
PSE.
that. Oh, it's heavy. Look at that thing.
The overdraw.
Overdraw.
Hey,
this
hats off
does
to the-
feel so World War II military.
Yeah.
Like, look at those pins. I had pins just like this, but they had little circular hoops.
Yep.
for
We've
each
got
size.
customers though that come in here that were just the good old boys that once something works, they never change it.
Yep.
We got a customer that comes in here that has an old bow like that, and I'm not kidding you. He's killed more animals than anybody I know.
Yep.
And he shoots fingers,
Yeah.
no sight.
I mean, it worked back
he
then.
crushes stuff. It's very impressive.
See, I tell guys, for me, I'm a terrible bow hunter, so I can't kill animals with stuff like that. I've got to have the new greatest stuff for me to even have a chance. So
It is a pleasure shooting the new stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, this is just a testament to archery and where it's going and people's excitement for it. And
Yeah.
you know what we try to do here at Wilde Arrow is bring the excitement to that guy, to the guy that has the newest bow, to the oldest bow. Doesn't matter what you shoot. If you love archery, bring it in. We'll
big
get
part
it
of
set up
archery is the
and-
experience,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's the
different. Like,
experience.
so
Yep, it's the fun part.
Yep.
So.
watching your arrow leave your bow and hit that target, something
Something
magical happens
magical.
with that. It's cool.
You kind of need a lighted knock with the Valkyrie. I can't see it once it gets out.
Flies too straight. Yeah.
It's hard to see.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. It disappears on me.
I
out
can't.
there.
I can't shoot lighted knocks because I get too excited about the knock.
You,
so
you always
I
aim
shoot
for
it and I'm like, ooh, pretty light, and then throw my bow out and I don't follow through. It's bad
That's
deal,
another
man.
that's another conversation. But
Yeah.
we talked about this earlier too. I love my lighted knocks. They're like one of my favorite things on my system. So
Right.
we're gonna have to get into that because I asked them the question, "What's your favorite lighted knock?" or the best lighted knock? And Cody's answer was no lighted knock. So
Yeah.
they all suck.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to get into that on a later podcast. But thanks for joining me, guys. And everyone, thanks for tuning in. Stay gritty.